FPL Game Week 4, a wildcard draft for you. In today's video, we're going to take a look at what I would do if I was considering playing the chip. Now, I've got a couple of issues in my team. I did buy Ismail Assar, who looks like he's out for a while. So I am considering playing the chip, and I've put quite a lot of thought into two drafts, one with Erling Haaland and one without him. So we're going to take a look at what I would go with if you are considering playing the chip over the international break, which is normally one of the most popular times to play it. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new to the channel as well. Thank you all very much for your support, and likes and subscribes. I do massively appreciate it. We're going to dive straight in and talk about sort of players. But before we actually look at the wild card, actually, first of all, I have upgraded, well, changed the background as per the feedback. The majority of you liked the sort of slightly darker look of the background from the video I did earlier on in the week. I'm interested to know if you still feel the same once you see it for a whole video, whether you just liked it as a snapshot, but actually when it's there for the whole video. So again, let me know in the comments if you like the new darker background or you want me to go back to what we've been using previously. I'm also going to be changing my logo. Now you're probably thinking, Harry, that is a monumental, fundamental change to change your logo. Don't worry, it's nothing drastic, and the majority of you would probably not even notice a difference. But I'm going to be upgrading or changing the photo that I use on my logo to actually look more like me. That photo was about 4 or 5 years ago, before I even started wearing glasses as an example, and it didn't look that much like me anymore. And people have always said, oh, Harry, you need to change it, you need to refresh it. So I have done it. Now I'll be rolling out across all my sort of graphics, socials over the next sort of week during the international break. So if you see my logo and it looks slightly different and you're thinking, is that Harry? It is. It's just changed very slightly with a new picture. But what we're going to dive in, and before we actually look at the wildcard drafts that we've got, is we're going to talk about, I would say, the 8 biggest things that happened in the transfer window over the past few days. Starting off at Liverpool, the big one is Alexander Isak. Now, I did post on Twitter about what people expect to happen to the Liverpool lineup if Alexander Isak signs and who is likely to be most impacted. And it was a complete debate between Ekitike and Gakpo. The general consensus is they don't expect Isak to start Burnley away, but after that, going into game week 5 onwards, which is 3 weeks from now, they do expect Isak to probably be fully up to speed, which makes both Ekitike and Gakpo a slight risk. It does also mean that when there is Champions League rolling around, we have to try and predict where is likely to be the most important games for Liverpool, because Isak is known to be a player that can't play 3 times a week. And with Liverpool wanting to compete for the title and win the Champions League as well, it's not impossible that Alexander Isak also doesn't start both games. So if you are looking to wildcard soon, you can look to buy someone like a Gakpo or an Ekitike. But if you aren't, I think both of them, along with Isak, are big risks. I'm not sure we can look to own any of them at the moment, which actually makes Florian Wirtz a really interesting option. And although he's been disappointing, he's been quite reliable for minutes, and he's likely to be reliable for starts going forward, along with Mo Salah. The next one is Mark Guéhi of Crystal Palace not joining Liverpool. That got the here we go from Fabrizio Romano, and then it got cancelled. And it is a boost to Crystal Palace because they didn't really have a replacement. So defensively, I really like the Crystal Palace defence. However, over the past sort of day or so, it sounds like Palace are going to be without probably Ismail Assar and Adam Wharton for quite a period of time. And of course, they've lost Eze in their forward line. And I do think this will impact them, both in terms of creating chances, but also Wharton in terms of the way they control games. Now, I still think we can look to invest in Crystal Palace. Their fixtures are good enough, and I do think they will look good. But it does potentially concern me a little bit, plus with the amount of European games, that they might not look quite as good and quite as solid as maybe we've seen in the first few games. Because Mateta did an interview with Sarr after the game against Aston Villa, where he just said, we're already so tired. And as soon as Europe starts and they're playing 3 times a week, every single week, Glasner has also hinted there might be a little bit of added rotation. I'm not putting you off it, but just generally with Palace, I still like them, but they're without a few key players. Then we're moving to Aston Villa, where they've signed Sancho on loan and Harvey Elliott from Liverpool, both to Aston Villa. And I think particularly Elliott is a great signing. He's got the number 9 shirt. He is 5.4 million, and we expect some decent minutes for him. We don't know whether that's definitely going to be straight away, but we know with the lack of goals they've scored early on that they need to strengthen in terms of the attacking areas, and I think they've done that. It does potentially encourage me to think a bit more positively about Watkins and Rodgers in my team. Donnarumma and Manchester City is coming at 5.5 million. I expect him to go almost straight in. It might not be quite for game week 5, but I expect Trafford to drop out if you've got him. Manchester United have signed a new goalkeeper in Layman's, and their fixtures coming up are not that great. We're also not likely to be investing in the Man United defence anytime soon, but it is a boost. Let's see how they get on. And then 2 new signings at Spurs, and I really encourage people not to buy Richarlison and not to buy Brennan Johnson because of the signings that they might look to make. Kolo Muani mainly plays up front, which is a massive issue if you've got Richarlison. I do expect him to be a longer-term number 9, especially given that Solanke might be out for a longer period of time. He can also play wide, which could impact someone like a Johnson. Johnson got taken off really early against Bournemouth when they were struggling to score. And as I said, when things are not going well, he's the one that's likely to be sacrificed. Xavi Simons is likely to play in the 10. I do expect good minutes for him. Let's see quite how quickly he embeds in and how good he looks, but one to keep an eye on definitely with the Spurs fixtures coming up. And then we're looking at Newcastle. They have lacked goal threat. They have lacked players that can put the ball in the back of the net, and they have signed 2 of them. Johan Visser and Walter Mada, both very good goal scorers. I actually wonder if Visser might be the one that starts more early on, just because he knows the Premier League and he's more of a proven goal scorer, but in the league, that is, because Walter Mada's come from the Bundesliga. I'm sure in the comments, the Newcastle fans will tell me you've spent the money on Walter Mada, so he'll definitely go in. Let's wait and see who is going to be starting, but Newcastle needed it. Isak has left, and they've signed 2 very good replacements, although Visser was quite expensive for his age. So although 7 minutes into this video, let's take a look at the first wildcard draft, and this has gone with a Salah, no Haaland draft. I think if you're wildcarding now, one of the things you need to try and do is get ahead on Arsenal. Game week 7 is going to be a mass buy of Arsenal, 2 or 3 players. Saka, Gyökeres, Gabriel, Raya, a lot of these players are going to be high priority purchases in a few weeks. And if you are wildcarding early, you need to be considering going early on them. So I've gone with Sanchez and Dubravka. They remain the 2 favourite goalkeepers that we've got. You could go with Tosin, but when Champions League starts, I'm not fully certain what's happening in that Chelsea defence. We've built a robust defence. Again, if you're wildcarding early, you need to do your best to build a squad that you don't think you will need that many transfers on to fix things that you don't really want to fix. So we've gone with Gabriel, Van Dijk and Daniel Munoz. If you wanted to downgrade Munoz to a Chris Richards or a Lacroix, you could do that, but I do really like Munoz. I don't think there's much between Munoz and Lacroix, to be honest. We've also got Senesi and Van der Ven on the bench. Again, if you needed 0.5, could go Van der Ven down to a 4 million option like Rodon, but this defence is built to not need a transfer for a very long time and to hopefully start rolling, because if you've wildcarded early, you need to do your best to have more transfers once we get to the likes of game week 6, the likes of game week 8, and the likes of game week 13, where other people are going to be playing their wildcards. So you need to start building up transfers rather than wasting them on moving defenders side to side. So that's why we've spent so much money there. Into the attack. So we've gone with Salah, as I said, and I do think if you're wildcarding now, it's difficult to own Gakpo, Ekitike or Isak, but if you wanted to go with one of them and have a route to go sideways, like go Gakpo and then move to Semenyo in a few weeks, then that is something you could do. Go Ekitike and move to Gyökeres in a few weeks. You could do that, but it is booking in a transfer. Outside of that, we've gone with 4 slightly cheaper options. So Semenyo in there. Again, you could go for someone else like a Gakpo at that price. Kudus of West Ham. If I knew that Xavi Simons was ready, I could opt for him. And then we've gone with Paquetá, and I'm actually really interested with him in my own team. The upcoming fixtures are not that great, but he's not been bad for defensive contributions. It looks like West Ham have switched to a back 4 where they might create some chances. He's on some set pieces, and he might be on penalties as well by the looks of it, seeing as he took one and scored one in game week 3. At 5.9 million now, could be a really, really interesting option and very good for minutes as well. And then we've gone with Dewsbury Hall. I like Grealish, I like Illiman and Dye, but in this structure, I've gone with Dewsbury Hall as my cheap option. You could do Kudus to Grealish and try and upgrade Dewsbury Hall to someone like Reinders or an Anderson. You've got the money in the bank to make those swaps if you want to go with a Grealish or an Illiman and Dye. And then up front, as I said, trying to get ahead of Arsenal, I've opted for Gyökeres. No Villa, no Watkins, because they've been disappointing. We've gone with Mateta. Now, without Sarr there and without Wharton and, of course, no Eze, they might create a little bit less, but so much of that attacking weight will have to fall on Mateta, so I still would go with him. And then, of course, we've gone with João Pedro as our Chelsea cover. It is a little bit light in midfield is the only thing, but I don't know who else I'd really want. Like, you could go Bruno. over someone like a Semenyo. But to free up that money, Van Dijk would probably have to come down to someone like another 4.5 option like Anderson at Fulham. So I don't mind that if you want to stretch up to Bruno, but I imagine the majority of you watching don't want to go with him. I think it looks good. You will need transfers, rotating some of those cheaper mids around. But apart from that, I like Salah long term, João Pedro, Mateta, Gyökeres, and the defense long term. So unless you've got an injury, and we always say this, oh, the team looks great, you won't need transfers. There'll be something you need a transfer on. But Semenyo, Kudus, Paquetá, Dewsbury Hall feel like the ones you'll want to use your transfers on in the near future, but a lot of them have good short-term fixtures. So this is what a wildcard draft would look like if you didn't want Haaland. And then to go and have a quick look at what a draft would look like and how things would change a little bit if you wanted to go Haaland. And I probably would go Salah and Haaland rather than just dropping Haaland. Again, just because I don't know where the reliable picks are at Liverpool at the moment. If you trust a Gakpo or an Ekitike long term, or you want to go straight to Isak, then maybe. But outside of that, I'm going Salah and I'm going Haaland. So you have to downgrade a little bit in defence. So I've gone with Munoz down to Lacroix. I've gone Van Dijk down to Anderson. And I've gone, who was it? Van de Ven, sorry, down to Rodon on the bench. And I've also downgraded Semenyo to Reinders. Basically, all of those downgrades allow you to do Gyökeres up to Haaland. I don't think it's worth it. If I was wildcarding, I would go with the no Haaland draft because Haaland is probably better than Gyökeres, but I don't think the other massive downgrades that you are making are worth it. Like Semenyo is definitely better than Reinders. Munoz versus Lacroix, okay, there's not much in it, but Van Dijk versus Anderson, you probably would say there is enough in it. If you think Reinders gets close enough to Semenyo, then it probably is worth it. Like you've got double Manchester City in here. And the other thing is this is much better at saving the free hit in game week 6 because you've got double Manchester City at home to Burnley this week, whereas the other draft didn't really have any Manchester City for that Burnley at home fixture. So it also depends a little bit on what your planned chip strategy is. But this is a wildcard draft with Haaland. The other draft that I looked at, which I'll put back up on screen now, was the wildcard draft without Haaland. Is probably my slight favourite. I prefer the depth if you're going to wildcard early. Haaland is great, but I still think the Haaland-Salah combination is difficult to squeeze both in, and I would want Salah for a liability at Liverpool at the moment. So that is 2 drafts. We've also discussed players that have moved over the transfer window, lots of that. The other thing, of course, is if I was on wildcard and Ismaila Sarr was available for game week 4, he would be in every wildcard draft. The really annoying thing with me buying him is he is the best 6.5 million mid, and I'm really happy with myself that I made the decision going into game week 3 to buy him, because the more I look at it, the more I think I've made some bad decisions for the start of the season. I categorically have. Got double Villa who haven't scored a single goal. I bought Chris Wood as part of a bandwagon and he blanked and now he's got Arsenal. But Ismaila Sarr was the best 6.5 million mid, and I still believe hands down he is that. But now he's injured, so he's not in these drafts. If we get to the deadline and suddenly he miraculously recovers, then Ismaila Sarr would probably go in place of the likes of Kudus, Paquetá, Semenyo, depending on which squad you go with. So keep an eye on that. And it would also boost Mateta if he is back and available because they do need attackers. But we'll wrap it up there. It's international break, so we'll try and keep the videos a little bit shorter. Thank you all for all of your support. Drop any questions you have in the comment section down below. Like before you go, subscribe if you're new, and I'll be back again very soon.